What's your worst no good deed goes unpunished story? I found a dog, a pit bull, wandering in my neighborhood along a busy street. I hopped out of my car and put my dog's spare collar on him to keep him from being hit. I walked to all the nearby houses and knocked on the doors asking if anybody belonged to the dog or if they knew who did. After about 10 houses, I gave up and took him home. That afternoon, I made found dog flyers without the dog's picture, about 100 in all, and put them around the area. In front of my house, I put a big one so people would know that this was the place. After a few days, I had pretty much resigned myself to keeping the guy when I got a phone call. The lady gave a perfect description of the dog and told her she could swing by and pick him up. About an hour later, she shows up with the cops. She gets out of her car and greets me with, "Are you the one that stole my dog?" I was, of course, taken aback. I stood there with a slack jaw, not knowing what to say. "I asked you a question. Did you steal my dog?" "What? No, I found a dog and tried to find his home." "You stole him and I have witnesses." She then tried to get the officer to arrest me. It only took a few moments for the officer to realize she was crazy. "So, he stole your dog, asked all your neighbors who the dog belonged to, put up signs saying he had the dog, and then invited you over to take the dog back? Either he's the worst criminal in the world or you don't understand the definition of stole, ma'am." She then claimed I stole the dog for the reward money. The officer said he didn't see an offer for a reward, nor did I ask for one. "But just out of curiosity, how much reward money were you going to offer?" asked the officer. $200. That's what he wants. That's why he took the dog." "Well, we have no evidence of him stealing the dog, but it seems to me that he's earned the reward money. Worst $200 I ever earned." Earning a reward by saving a dog? More like earning a headache. I'd rather just take the money than have to deal with that woman. Story 2. Last night, my friends and I found a woman's wallet on the sidewalk in downtown Athens, Georgia. The driver's license had a name and date of birth, and she had a University of Georgia student card. We looked her up in the UGA directory and called her to return the wallet. She was grateful, and we felt like heroes. Well, guess what? She showed up to meet us with her tough guy boyfriend, who smelled like a brewery and accused us of stealing it. They tried to interrogate us for 5 minutes straight as we attempted to hand them the wallet and leave. It was so bizarre. We were baffled. We're 6 well-dressed UGA alumni and students, 2 females, 4 males, some in their 30s, working professionals who had driven to meet her voluntarily to return the wallet. And she thought we were the thieves? It was unreal. They claimed $500 was missing from the wallet. Our immediate response, "You carry $500 around in your wallet?" The boyfriend became irate and screamed, "Y'all ain't going nowhere until I find out which one of you took it." Exact quote. Again, there were 6 of us there and 1 of him. Needless to say, we weren't intimidated. The girlfriend looked scared. I diffused the situation, separated everyone, and got the hell out of there. Story 3. I live in an area with fairly low-priced rentals, so it's full of college kids and people who are of lower incomes. I was at the corner store and the family in front of me had a case of drinks, a 12-pack of Coke, a few packs of cigarettes, chicken nuggets, macaroni and cheese, and some milk. The debit card got denied, so they took out the milk. Got denied again, took out the chicken. Got denied again, took out the mac and cheese. Finally got approved, so they were going home with drinks, Coke, and cigarettes. Their 2 kids, maybe 4 and 6, asked what they were having for dinner if they didn't have the chicken nuggets. The mom's response was, "You can drink Coke, it's got calories." The younger kid started crying for the chicken nuggets. The mom grabbed her by the arm and told her she wasn't getting any dinner. I bought their chicken nuggets and ran after them. I tried to give them the box and the mom started screaming at me, "Do we look like a charity case? I can raise my own kids. You don't know what it's like being a mom." And tons of other BS. I was like, "Just take the goddamn chicken. Your kids are hungry." The woman hit the box out of my hands and she and her man grabbed the kids and stormed away. I wish I'd followed them and called CPS or something. Story 4. I captured a pit bull puppy in my backyard when it was chasing some workmen back there, and frankly, it needed to not be running loose in my neighborhood. He had tags, so I called the phone number, left voicemail, hung out with the puppy for a bit, gave him water, etc., tried again, left another voicemail. Can't sit here playing with the puppy all day though I wish I could. Called animal control. "Oh, yeah, is that Jax? Can you bring him in? We have a seizure warrant if he's found unleashed again," indicating the owners regularly let him out without supervision. I felt bad but called the owner's number again and left voicemail letting them know that Jax would be at the pound and they could pick him up there. Took him to the pound. This was a super sweet pup, by the way, who totally deserved much better humans. 15 minutes after I got home, they knock on my door demanding to know where the dog is. Then they tell me I shouldn't have done anything with their dog, on my property, bothering people. And how would I like it if someone took my dog to the pound? Well, ma'am, I'd be grateful for them making sure my dog was safe. My dog isn't allowed to roam around without a leash. I shut the door in their face and never looked back. Story 5. Caution, this one is sad. My uncle's best friend is a man named Terry. Terry was a large man and quite the bruiser. In the mid-1990s, Terry was at a local dive bar when he heard a man screaming at a woman. He really rips into spewing loudly across the bar. Terry steps in, tells the guy to keep it down or take it home. Nobody wants to hear their problems. The girl runs off to the bathroom crying, and the man apologizes to Terry, telling him, "Sorry, man, I just found out she cheated on me." The guy promises to keep it down, and Terry walks away. When the girl comes back from the bathroom, the yelling resumes, and the guy hauls off and hits her. The girl runs off, and Terry comes charging over to give the man an ultimatum. Terry offers to take the guy out or let him walk out on his own. The guy chooses the latter. A couple of minutes pass, and the bar phone rings, a call for Terry. Terry picks up the phone and almost instantly drops to the floor in agony. The man went across the street to a payphone, called the bar, asked for Terry, then snuck back in and hurt in the back, making him immobile. The guy took off, running, but was caught a month or so later in Florida. The girl was still there to identify him. Terry is and always will be in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down, all for standing up for a girl. Story 6. I lent a very good friend about $500. His parents were fairly well off, and I knew his parents sent him a huge check every birthday because we would always travel right after he got the check. Annual $10,000 gift parents are allowed to distribute tax-free to their kids, so I knew I would get it back in a few weeks. Being mindful, I told him under no uncertain terms that this was a loan and expected to be paid back by X date period. He agreed. Well, the payback date came and passed and nothing yet. His birthday was about 2 weeks after, so I waited until after his birthday. Still no check. I called him and asked what happened. I got lie after lie. First, his checking account was compromised and he needed to order checks. Then he was waiting for his parents' check to arrive. He even went as far as sending me a check on a closed account. Stupid, because I knew from talking to him the account was closed, and he didn't bank there anymore, and it had his old address on it from 2 years ago. I asked him why he would send me a check on a closed account, and I got yelled at for not being a good friend and not being supportive of his problems. I was very nice to him until this point, but I let him have it. I'm not a good friend? I send you $500 so you can pay your rent and don't say a word for weeks, and you say I'm not supportive? A good friend would pay me back without the lies and forcing me to call you and ask you for the money. I had a check in the mail the same week and haven't talked to him since. When "I'll pay you back" turns into "I'll lie and dodge." F.O. friendship over. Story 7. I helped 2 guys out of a crushed car, putting my life in danger as gas was spilling around me. They ran away as soon as I got them out. Turns out the car was stolen and the police were onto them. The cops found me on top of the car holding the door open and arrested me. Spent the night in jail for that good deed. Another time I worked in a restaurant at the beach. As I was closing, I saw a child wandering around crying. I abandoned my work and stayed with her for 4 hours or something, calling the cops, trying out numbers she thinks she remembers. When the cops and the parents finally come, they start interrogating me like I took her or something. After some time, I got angry and started shouting, and they just told me to go away. Not even a thank you or anything. Another time, a guy in front of me at the ATM machine left a full wallet on the machine and walked away. I wasn't paying attention to him, so I didn't even notice what he was wearing. So I took the wallet into the bank and explained at the counter what happened. There's a wad of cash in there. I say I have to leave, but was asked politely at first that I have to stay until they contact the owner. I say I have to leave. I had something important to do. Instead, the security guy detains me for like 30 minutes until the owner shows up. He says everything is in there, and I'm just standing there. Nobody told him that I found it. They just told me you can leave now. I had dreadlocks all these times, and my skin color is of the darker kind. Maybe played a role, maybe not. I don't know. I just continue doing good when I can, and most of the time it is appreciated. Story 8. When I was about 17, a gust of wind ripped my car door out of my hand and into the car that I was parked next to. I went into the store and had the manager call for the owner of the car using description and license plate number. No one came forward. I went back out to the parking lot and waited for the owner to show. When the owners arrived, I told them I was sorry that I had dented the side of their door. I showed them the small dent and offered to exchange insurance information. The wife was a straight-up witch. She started huffing and puffing, walking around her car and finding other dents in her fender, rear quarter panel, places that it would have been impossible for my door to have caused damage. I told her that I did not cause the other dents and she should be lucky that I was an honest person, as most people would have just found another parking spot and not told her at all. Her husband came to my rescue and calmed her down and explained to her how I could not have caused the other dents. He even opened up my door to show her it wasn't possible. She went on and on and on and wanted to exchange insurance info. Her husband ushered her into their car and told me to just go. He said he wasn't worried about the dent I caused and thanked me for being so honest. As they were pulling away, his wife glared at me until they were out of sight. Story 9. So my boyfriend and I just graduated and were naturally receiving some cards in the mail. Some with money, some without, whatever. Anyways, my boyfriend has this grandpa who inherited a lot of money way back when and has since lost most of it in the stock market. The family always rants about how he doesn't care about them and tries to milk him for money. He bought their 2 cars before he lost a lot of his money. My boyfriend received a card from him with no money in it, laughed at the snarky message, money is fleeting, knowledge is power, and seemed happy enough. A few days later, his mom is making a list of everyone who sent him cards. She even writes down how much each person sent as if that would determine the extent of her thank you, and compares the amounts. When the grandpa comes up and she remembers he did not send any money, she doesn't write his name down. Apparently, she planned to only send thank yous to the people who sent cash. She and her husband then proceeded to bitterly remark with the biggest eye rolls possible that, since the grandpa had decided to help pay for my boyfriend's college education, they guess that made up for it. As someone who hasn't seen or heard from my grandparents and the majority of my extended family since I was 5 years old due to family pettiness, I was mad. Story 10. I'm a female education major and I work part-time at a retail store in the mall. A little boy of about 3 left his mother and was running into the crowded food court, and it was Black Friday in my low-income area, so there were a lot of people. I yelled for his mom, but she was in the dressing room, so I ran out and grabbed him before he could get lost in the crowd of people. When I walked back in the store, the woman charged at me. As I explained that he had run out of the store, there was no way she didn't know what I was doing. Took the kid out of my hands, grabbed my ponytail, got in my face, and screamed at me. Then she went into a rant about how white people need to stop trying to save black babies and that the white man didn't know what was best for black kids. Her speech was strewn and she was yanking my hair the whole time. My boss called security but was otherwise useless and not a single customer did anything. I didn't fight back because she had a child in her arms, she was larger, and people in the area have been known to carry weapons. Anyway, a security guard showed up. She was later arrested and faced charges. Story 11. I was 16 and getting on the last bus of the night to go home. It was about 10:30. A man got on the bus a couple of stops after I had. He was 25 cents short and the bus driver was trying to tell him that he couldn't get on without it, but he didn't speak any English. I casually got out of my seat and put a quarter into the fare box for him. It really wasn't a big deal. My house was sort of in the boonies, no street lights, and the houses were pretty spread out, but it was only a quarter mile from my house to the bus stop. I got off on my stop and noticed that this man had also gotten off with me. I immediately knew something was wrong because no one else ever gets off the bus out there. I had time to lay one solid pound on the side of the bus while it was pulling away to try to stop the driver, but it didn't work. I didn't make eye contact. I walked as quickly as I could, and so did he. Then he started running. I wasn't sure if I would make it to my house and didn't know if I wanted him knowing where I lived, even if I could. I ran to the one house in between mine and the bus stop. It was a humongous house. I'd never met the people that lived there, but I didn't care. As I was about halfway up the driveway, I couldn't hear him behind me anymore. 2 giant people answered the door. I was shaking and looking down the driveway and trying to explain what happened. I just wanted to use the phone to call my folks, then I realized that I'm speaking to 2 giant teenagers. They tell me to wait and they would get their dad. Turns out Dad was a bald, 7-foot, 350-pounder who hates immigrants. I asked if I could use the phone and he said he would just drive me home. We go get in his gigantic pickup truck. I told him which way I lived and which way I thought the guy went. Giant redneck Dad decides to find this dude first. He pulled up behind him, turned his brights on and screamed while acting like he was going to run him over. Neighbor took me home. I never called the cops. I started carrying a weapon. Story 12. I worked at a video arcade indoor amusement center back in high school and college. There were so many times I got accused of terrible stuff. You strapped my kid in too tight. They go to loosen straps, and I have to argue with them about how I'm trained to do this, and by loosening it that much, your child might be the one to fall out. Or the opposite would happen. My kid isn't tight enough. Do you want him to fall out? The parent then proceeds to tighten the strap to the point where the child looks like he or she can't even breathe right. Or the dozens of times when a kid is too big or too small to get on a ride, and the parent or parents make it a point to say that I just won't let the kid on as a personal attack against them, or that I'm prejudiced, or some other random craziness. There were two, though, that took the cake. One time it was early in the morning and not everyone was on shift, had arrived at work yet. I'd gotten a promotion where I wouldn't have to run the normal rides and could just spend my day overseeing the floor and fixing arcade games. Anyway, people were running late, so I was on the carousel and this one couple in the distance was waving at me to come over to the train ride. I was obviously running the ride, so I couldn't leave my post, so I waved for them to come over to me. They ignored me and walked over to the front desk, so I assumed whatever it was they needed, they would get it there. I head over to where the train rides, and it's being run by one of the other guys now, and I asked him what they wanted, and he said they just wanted someone to come over and run the ride, so I said, all right, and went about my business. I get called over by the manager who tells me that he understands they're a little crazy, but they're saying I refuse to help them, and just to make it look like I just got yelled at. I walk away and the husband comes over with his kid in his arm and starts screaming at me. You're saying terrible things about my wife behind her back. I'll roughen you up right now. Excuse me, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to refrain from using that language in here. This is a family establishment. Don't tell me what to do. Meanwhile, I have the keys to the arcade games, which back then were kept on a large metal pipe, so it was very hard to lose them. And I'm thinking, all right, okay, I'm going to have to defend myself with this thing. Luckily, my manager, who was an ex-Marine, comes over and says, is there a problem? And quickly diffuses the situation and kicks them out. The second instance was a few months after that. I was running one of the rides I had to be certified in because it was slightly more complicated than the others. It's an expensive ride, so not a lot of people go on it, and my manager comes over and tells me to tell the parents of this kid to have their child to get off of the air hockey machine. I go over and do the whole, sir, you can't have your child running around on the air hockey table, it can be dangerous. He ignores me. I say the same thing again. He ignores me again. I go to say a third time, and one of the higher level tech guys stops by and much more upfront says, get your kid off the air hockey table, it's dangerous, and we don't want anything to happen to the machine or your daughter. Now this guy flips out, my daughter is fine sitting on the table. And they just go back and forth. The tech guy is always looking for a fight. When I started there, he had 3 teeth. By the time he left, he had none. So back to the story, the tech was ready to throw down, and then my manager comes over, same ex-Marine, and diffuses the situation a bit but tells the guy to take his daughter and leave. I thought that was the end of it. Instead, he walks over to me, gets in my face, and says, you started this, you gotta leave some work sometime tonight. I'm going to come back here later and wait for you to leave, and I'm going to end you. At this point, one of the owners of the establishment comes over to inform the guy that he is on camera, and if he shows up back here, we will call the cops. Luckily, I am still here, 9 years later, still alive. And if you're learning a thing or two and enjoying the video so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 13. This one is probably going to get buried out, but here it goes. Several years ago, I had a very easy job doing IT for a school, and me and the district managers were very good friends. Well, a friend of mine was posting on MySpace at the time. I know, so long ago, right? About being totally poor and living at his parents' place while being around 24 at the time. So I talked to my boss, and there happened to be an opening at another school that we did work for. I had him send in his resume to my boss, and he got the job. He lived out of town when he was offered a job, 5 hours from where I live, and he had no place to stay and no money to get a place, so I offered to do several things. First, help him move. Second, stay with us, rent-free for like 2 months while he got on his feet. And third, only made him pay 1/3 of the rent and utilities. So I fly down to his hometown, help load up the U-Haul, and drive back to my city to my place. We signed a new lease with a new townhouse. He didn't sign it, stupid me, and we moved in. From that point on, he refused to help with anything at the house, stating, I didn't make the mess, so I'm not going to help. No dishes, no vacuuming, nothing, no help at all with anything. Then he started getting very reclusive, only staying in his room and never opening the door, and would drive 5 hours every weekend to his hometown to be with his psycho girlfriend. Well, things hit the fan with my new job. I got a huge pay increase and I got let go and couldn't go back to my old job with my old awesome boss. So instead of trying to return the favor of me helping him out, he decides to just up and move out to a new apartment on the other side of the city. A month or two later, just quit his job at the place I got him to work with nearly no notice and just bailed on us all. If I will ever help anyone again, that was the last straw. Though we, my wife and I, fell victim to niceness several times after that and got horribly burned each time. I hate people. Story 14. I leased an apartment with my friend and his boyfriend. I was the only one working a reliable job at the time, and well, as I should have predicted, he lost his job a few months in, so it was the only two of us working. This should have not been an issue, but our agreed deal was to pay 1/3 of the rent. They couldn't afford their 2/3, and since most of it was spent on drinks, video games, and who knows what else, I had to pay his portion of the rent and sometime his boyfriend's for the better part of a year or find another place to live, of which I had none. Long story short, I get fed up with their constantly leaving moldy dishes in the kitchen, entering my bedroom and stealing my food in my fridge. That got so bad I had to install a lock on my fridge, then they complained about trust. So I leave with 3 days left to the month. They owe me collectively $700. It's been about 5 years and I have never seen the money. I'm the bad guy for leaving at the end of the month. One by one, he turns the rest of our friends against me. I'm better off. They were all terrible people. I would rather have learned that without losing all the money while trying to help out a friend, though. Story 15. When I was in high school, I got friend-zoned and ultimately cut off by a girl named Jess that broke my heart pretty badly. She explained to a mutual friend that she never wanted to speak to me again. A year or so after that happened, we got a new student in my English class that was pretty creepy. Whenever he participated in class discussions, his input was usually very dark and morose. He often chose to sit in the back corner of the class away from everyone else, and for that we called him Puerto Rico. One day out of the blue, Puerto Rico calls me at home. I never talked to him or gave him my number. He looked it up in the phone book. He proceeds to say, "Hey, this is Puerto Rico. Do you know Jess's phone number?" Hey, Puerto Rico. No, I don't know her number. Do you know anybody who does? No. Sorry, buddy. I didn't actually know her number, but I sure as hell wouldn't give it to him if I did. The next day, I'm talking to my friend Chris, and he says that Puerto Rico called him up that day as well and asked the same question. We laughed about it and said we should probably tell Jess if we see her. Later that day, I'm walking to class, and Jess and her friends passed by me. As soon as I saw her, I excitedly said, "Hey, Jess, the craziest thing happened yesterday. Puerto Rico called me up out of nowhere and wanted your number. You might want to watch out for it." She cuts me off mid-sentence and yells, "Yeah, I'm sure you're so full of BS. You heard Chris's story and then wanted an excuse to talk to me, so you thought you'd tell me Puerto Rico called you too." At that point, her friend grabbed her by the arm and pulled her away. I just stood there in stunned silence. It was probably the first time I'd spoken to her since she told me to get off, and I thought I was trying to do the right thing. She decided to be a witch even more. Story 16. This'll probably get buried, but what the hell. I was working at a lesser-known coffee shop when I saw that someone had left his wallet on the seat. I was cleaning the lobby when I noticed it. He'd driven off, but the drive-thru gave me access out the window and held up, waved his wallet in the air. He noticed and immediately flung his car around, making a loud screech. He parked in our drive-thru and then stormed into the store. Immediately, he began shouting. He's about 6 feet tall, so he's got my attention, and accusing me of stealing the wallet. He accused me of stealing money, and when I revealed that I had no money, he accused me of stealing it and then putting it into the tip jars. He reaches his mitt into our tip jar and grabs the few bills we have in there. I stand in front of him and, very sternly, explain to him that the money belongs to myself and my coworker and that if he did not leave, we would call the police. My goal was to just walk away, but it got a bit heated. I'm 6'2", but I've got very long hair. I kept it in a ponytail, which he yanked just hard enough to get a reaction from me. Before I know what's happening, I'm turning around and I hurt him. He retaliates, and by now my coworker has called the police. The store was located less than a mile from the county court police building, so there were policemen there at the scene. During the 2 to 3 minutes it took, I hopped behind the counter to avoid this guy. He'd taken to screaming in the empty store while smashing a mug every few seconds or throwing a tumbler. The entire store looked like it had been struck by a tornado. Unfortunately, this story doesn't have a happy ending either. He didn't choose to sue me. I could have countersued, but rather the establishment. The rule was that the case would be dropped if I was fired, and my employer agreed to this. I lost my job. Less sad part, I had another job which I allocated more hours to, which ended up making far more money than the coffee shop job. I do not know, care, want to know what happened to that coffee shop and if they sued for damages or anything. Story 17. I was coming down the stairs from the subway. A homeless woman was struggling to get down the stairs. She was carrying about 6 suitcases of various sizes, but all large. As I moved past her, she dropped 2 of them down the stairs, and I, not thinking about anything but trying to be helpful, raced down the stairs to grab them before they tumbled all the way down. I gathered the bags up, and as I stood up to hand the woman her bags with a big stupid grin on my face, I got an open-handed slap. I stood there, stunned. She started to scream at me about how I should get away. I stuttered, trying to make sense of the situation. I said something like, and she just screamed that if I didn't like getting slapped, I should just go talk to the cops. I turn and there's a cop just standing there. He saw the whole thing and just stared at me like he had a digestion problem. At that point, I dropped the bags and walked away. Worst part, this is rush hour. Tons of people in the subway. Not a single person stopped to check out what was going on. Not a damn one. I hate New York City. A cop just standing there? Must be rush hour for law enforcement too? Story 18. Unfortunately, I have a lot of these stories, but here's one. So I had a friend who was more like a brother to me who dated a girl who I became good friends with because she was his girlfriend and we stayed friends after they broke up. One day, I had coffee with her. I needed to talk to someone about a girl that had just dumped me, and she needed to talk about her breakup. Seemed like a normal friend thing to me. Anyway, he flipped, saying I was trying to steal his girlfriend, who he had broken up with, and I was in no way interested in. He tried to start a bunch of drama. I basically told him I wasn't interested in her, we were just friends, and that I'd talk to him when he calmed down. It took a good, 6 months, after which he seemed to come around. I hang out with him one time at my place, played some Xbox, and he mentioned he wanted to get some stuff for a country concert he was going to. Cowboy hat, more country-looking clothing, etc. I told him he could borrow my hat and anything else he needed, so he borrowed my favorite hat, one of my best shirts, a flask, a tool that cost me $40 to make, and some other things. He left for the show, told me he'd bring it all back the following week, and I never saw him again. I tried to get either my stuff back or the money for the things he took. Never did. All in all, I'd say he made off with a good $150 to $200 of what were, at the time, my favorite things I owned. Hey, I was young and we liked to drink. Sadly, I still haven't really learned my lesson. I go out of my way for people fairly often, only to be treated like trash. On the bright side, it really makes me thankful for the truly good people in my life. Story 19. One summer, I was walking my Dalmatian, Sweet Pea, and there was this Chihuahua loose, and I ended up running into my grandmother who was visiting for the summer. Anyways, we spent an entire Saturday afternoon looking for the owners, going door to door, and someone offered to hand the dog over to a friend who raises Chihuahuas, which was good enough for us. A few days later, I see a poster for the lost dog and rush over to the people we gave the dog to in the process of handing the Chihuahua to her friend. A few weeks later, I see the Chihuahua running loose, but with another dog. I couldn't catch them, but I saw her, Chihuahua, we'll call her Pee-Pee, again a month later with a golden retriever, and they ended up in our backyard. The dogs have tags with the owner's information, so we call and the family says they'll be right over. This family lives down the street from us, and they pick up the dog and give us a bottle of wine as a thank you. After a few months, we found the Pee-Pee, the golden retriever, and this third dog I saw with her the first time one school morning. So we called the owners at 7:15 a.m. to let them know their dogs are loose again and on our property, to which the oldest daughter starts crying and begging me to, "Please, why do you steal our dogs? Please stop stealing our dogs." Story 20. On my way to work through 5 Point Station in Atlanta, I stopped to get something to eat. After stuffing my face, a kid about my age, 20, 22, came up to me and asked me for some money for some food. Generally, I don't give out money, but I could tell this kid was legit just hungry. I pull out my wallet, hand the kid $5, handshake with a quick bro hug, and he starts walking into the fast food joint. As soon as I turn around, 3 cops put me into the ground, took the kid out of the restaurant, and detain us. While in custody, they find a lot of grass and some bags on the kid. This is where they begin to tell me that they're going to find the bag I dropped outside and proceed to pull out a bag from the kid's grass's bag, looked at each other, and laugh. This convinced me I need to write what they want on the report, so I did. Next day at the kid's arraignment, the prosecutor asks me about my statement. I recant with some choice words. He has to drop the case and both I and the kid walk. I filed a complaint. Story 21. Me and my friends were hanging out at a park at about 11 p.m., playing some sort of hide-and-seek version of a game. I had a pretty awesome hiding spot, so I could stay where I was. My friend got attacked by a group of men in their early 20s. I ran at them, yelling to hopefully get rid of them, and told them that I had already called the cops. I hadn't. A couple of them stood further back, but a small group of them got in my face and wanted $20 from me. I was broke. After it started looking worse for me, I tried explaining that I was broke, so I took out my wallet and let them look. And while one of them was looking into the wallet that I had opened, showing them, one of the men harmed me. The other friend of mine started freaking out on them. They all took off in a van after that without getting anything out of me or my two friends. Afterwards, me and my friend were still processing what had happened because it happened so fast. As we were calming down, we noticed that my friend's car was gone. The friend that was first attacked that I came out of hiding for, not only did he leave us while we stepped in to help him, he went to Taco Bell to get a drink of water. We could have been terminated for all he knew, and he didn't go for help. And this sounds stupid, but I only filed a police report to help kids younger than me. I'm also in my early 20s, and there aren't any lights over the park. So I never expected to find the people that mugged me because it was dark and very hard to identify the people there. My local paper published a short story of what happened on their website, and all the comments on it were accusing me and my friends of making this story up to start a town-wide battle, or make it something bigger than it was. Others said with confidence that it was a deal gone bad. The whole thing was a headache, but the people reading and posting on the story probably have kids, and they don't understand that my only motive was trying to protect their kids from people I thought we would never catch. Story 22. My mom remarried when I was 15. It was a quick wedding because, her new husband got her pregnant about 8 months before. My sister and I moved in with them to their new house. Fast forward to 3 years later, sis and I almost do everything around the house, including taking care of the half pint. Mom's husband is a controlling and suspicious schmuck. Every time the kid cries and I'm in the same room, it's automatically my fault. He would cry about anything. Loud noise, funny colors. He would walk into the living room and start bawling at the side of me and my sister watching TV, and the schmuck would come charging in and demand to know what happened to his son. Mom didn't do anything when he started yelling at us. One time, the schmuck was slamming the door behind him when he was going out back to the grill. Half Pint has his hand on the door frame. I grab his wrist and move his hand away just before the door could harm his fingers. He starts screaming at the top of his lung. My mom saw the whole thing, but she didn't say anything when her husband started yelling at me and accusing me of hurting his son. I can't get a word in edgewise. My sister steps in and speaks for me instead. He tells her to shut up. It's only then that my mom stepped in and told him he nearly hurt him, not me. He goes back to grilling like nothing happened. I kept my brother's fingers from getting squished, and I got yelled at. Story 23. I was out for my brother's bachelor party on St. Patrick's Day as we were at a popular bar in a popular bar district, and it was later in the day, so it was mostly after the aftermath of St. Pat's. The bathrooms were downstairs at the end of a short hallway, and this hallway looked like a war zone. The floor was literally covered in broken bottles. I don't know what happened down there. Anyways, I whizzed and on the way out, noticed a chick kind of huddled in a corner. I was relatively coherent still, so I asked her if she was okay and if she needed help up the stairs. She was completely disoriented and really didn't know what was going on, who she was with, etc. I used to work security at an all-girls dorm, and I had seen girls come in that had been spiked, and that's what it looked like to me. So I helped her up the stairs and said something to a group of waitresses and bartenders, and they literally just laughed in my face. It was appalling to me that they could not give the smallest care what happened to this person. After accosting them a bit, they said there were some cops outside. So I went out to the cops and hoped they would help, and they were less resistant, but gave me the third degree about it, asking me if I was the one who spiked her, asking the girl if I had hurt her, all this crazy stuff. Finally, they handed her off to someone else. There were cops everywhere, and let me go on my way. Story 24. A few years ago, I worked for an apartment rental agency in a customer service role. One day, a girl called to ask if I could email her pictures of one of my apartments because she was currently in a different city. I told her that this was a non-standard request, so it might take a few days, and that our policy was to not rent an apartment to a tenant who hadn't seen it in person. 2 days later, I was able to get one of the leasing agents to take the pictures she requested. We had to get the current tenant's permission first, and I emailed them to her, reminding her she would need to visit before signing the lease. She called the office a few minutes later asking to speak with me. Her response was that I'd promised I would send her pictures that same day. Also, that I'd promised her she could lease the apartment over the phone and that I was now discriminating against her by preventing her from renting that apartment. Oh, and also she was going to take me to court for discrimination. She then asked to speak to my manager and shortly thereafter faxed over a written complaint about me and how horribly she had been misled by me. I ended up on probation at work because of this girl who I went out of my way to help. Fortunately, she never tried to follow up after that because honestly, I have no idea what her game was. And well, if you like these stories so far, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.